Last night, the Board of Education voted to put a bond issue election on the ballot for February 25th, 2025. The $450 million bond issue will finance improvements outlined in Step 1 of the Facilities Master Plan that the Board of Education approved last month. The bond issue would be funded with no tax increase over the current bond mill levy that was also established last night by the Board of Education as they set their budget. This is just the third time the Wichita Public Schools has asked for a bond issue election in the past 50 years. And the last bond issue election will be 17 years prior to the vote coming up in February. The bond issue has investments all across the city, and it will upgrade and modernize aging facilities, focus on innovative learning spaces to support student success both now and in the future, help with more proactive maintenance versus costly disruptive repairs, address community desires for training in trades, early childhood services, and a bigger investment in K-8 schools. And it will help us to continue to be good stewards of community facility investments. This is a generational investment, not only in our facilities, but also in our students, who are the future of our community. As I said last night, as our kids go, so does our community. Our students deserve this, and the bond issue is an opportunity for our community to say to our students, we believe in you and you're worth it, regardless of where students live in our district. Here are some of the key points of the bond issue that we rolled out last month and we'll continue to talk about. Through step 1 of the process for the facility master plan, we would rebuild 7 buildings, creating facilities that are properly sized for current and future enrollment projections. There would be new facilities, including an early childhood learning center and a future-ready center for the construction trades. It would renovate and repurpose existing learning spaces to support new or expanded learning spaces, including converting 2 elementary schools to K-8 schools. It would close and relocate 4 schools and 2 support centers and move the programs to new or repurposed buildings. And it would close 4 schools and relocate those students to nearby buildings. This plan was developed with community input, and I believe it can reshape our school district for the future and be really exciting for the kids and the community. More details about the plan can be found on our website at usd259.org/bond25. And at this time, I would like to invite Board of Education President Stan Reeser to come forward and share some of his thoughts.
Thank you, Kelly, and good morning. I just want to echo real quick what Superintendent Bielefeld said about our students deserving this type of investment in them. Many of our schools were built in the baby boomer generation, and the learning spaces built back then don't work as well with the educational needs of our students today and in the future. The educational investment we are asking from our community will affect the next 2 to 3 generations of students. It's time to match our facilities with our desire to create high-impact learning spaces, as well as supporting our smaller, high-functioning neighborhood schools. Now, here's what I get really passionate about. Our students deserve the same opportunities and experiences that our surrounding school districts have. The Wichita Board of Education has always said that we want to be the premier district of choice in the region, and this is consistent with that goal. And again, this is the fiscally responsible plan because we are doing this without a mill levy increase. I look forward to working with the community in the coming months to share more about the plan and what we hope to accomplish. Thank you.
Over the next few months, there will be opportunities for stakeholder engagement to learn more about the plan. We will post everything on the website, usd259.org/bond25, BOND25. And at this point, we will take your questions. Either Stan or I.
So talk a little bit about next steps. I know that you're trying to get this special bond election in February, but it's a lot of money. what are you planning to do to kind of convince people to vote yes?
Yeah, we will start an educational campaign soon. We will do, if you watched kind of the second part of the board meeting last night, we've hired a consultant that will help us with some polling and some strategy and some communication efforts, along with financial oversight, along with construction oversight, all of those things. So that's really our next steps. We'll start providing tours of the buildings, both the rebuilds and then some of the newer facilities, to kind of show people what it could look like. There'll be some renderings, some architectural drawings that we'll begin to share about what it can look like if this bond were to pass. I think, go ahead. There might be things I'm leaving out.
I just want to mention as part of that question, this is actually a fairly modest ask. The total gross number sounds very large, but the last bond issue that was passed in Wichita by a surrounding school district was double the amount that we are asking for. It was $59 million, and it ended up being per capita for that school district almost $19,000 per student. Our ask is for $450 divided by almost 47,000 students, and it's half of that. So we feel, again, this is the fiscally responsible plan. That was one of the early directions the Board of Education gave the superintendent's office, was that we want this to be a modest ask. But when you have a school district our size, even a modest ask ends up looking like a very large number.
What is your plan if the school bond weren't to pass in February? I know that a lot of your plans and outlined kind of hinge on that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll regroup and decide what we need to do next. The facility master plan, step one that was passed at the August Board of Education meeting, will still be the plan, right? That will still be, that was based on data, based on community feedback. We did spend a lot of time shaping that plan, selecting the schools to rebuild in areas of town that have the most students. So it wasn't just haphazard. We chose those schools deliberately based on data and based on the information we have. So we'll continue to work the plan as best we can. We're hoping for a positive outcome in February, but that will be decisions will have to be made, after that, depending on how it goes.
I know you got this question last night, but I've also heard back from readers and seen some social media posts questioning why it's in February, whether that's necessary and whether that's like a deliberate choice to do it when there's low participation, because then only people passionate about the issue are voting. Could you go into that decision why it's February and not like a fall election or the city general election next year?
Yeah. So, and I'll let Stan, if he wants to choose that. We talked last night about some of the factors that were involved. Obviously, probably ideally, we could have done something this November, but with the timing of the master plan, the amount of community feedback we needed, that timeline was just too short. We would really like to get construction started next summer. And so to wait until later in the spring, April or May, makes that not possible. Then to wait, until November of 25, the soonest we would then have, dirt work moving would be summer of 26. We would lose an entire year. It's been 17 years, right? And it's been 3 bond issues in 50 years. And you don't have to look at any of the surrounding districts around us for their last 3 bond issues, probably all happened this century. So for us, we need this, and we need it soon, and we need to get moving on it. So those were some of the factors involved. I do believe, and I think it's important because to the point of your question, some of those accusations essentially not merited on anything other than speculation. We'll have mail-in vote, we'll have early voting, we'll have in-person voting, absentee voting. We're trying to get as many voters, not disenfranchise anybody. We want everyone to be able to have their voice heard. It was just more of a timing issue than anything. If we were really trying to limit voter feedback or turnout, we might have made, just a mail-in option or just one option for the election. We're spreading it out and trying to make sure everybody can have their voice heard. We just want, for the sake of our kids, we want to get things started summer of 25 if at all possible. So is that anything else you want to throw in?
Yeah, I would just add, this is really important component that I think the public needs to understand is the Board of Education had a choice this summer. We could either spend more time on the plan and make sure we understood it, make sure it got vetted, and that we were fully behind it, or we could rush through the plan and put it on the November ballot. And we chose the option of making sure we spent the entire summer going through this plan step by step, understanding that by taking all summer to really look at the plan and study the plan and ask questions about the plan, that it would probably create a spring election. So we chose the option of informing the public, giving them plenty of time to really look at the plan. And I fully believe we'll have a great participation in the spring election. Now, will it be the same as a presidential election? We know that's not going to happen, but we do know that our citizens are engaged with what we need to do for our students.
And what would you say to, what would you say to voters too, who of course saw 6 months ago the district decide to have to close schools because of budget issues, now asking for $450 million in this bond proposal?
So repeat that.
Yeah, just what will you say to voters who are concerned, of course, after seeing the district close schools earlier this year, now seeing the district going out for money to build new schools or replace schools, and then also closing new schools with this proposal?
Yeah, just to be clear, not going out for more money, right? Just extending the current tax structure. Right? The board voted last night to actually decrease everyone's taxes, and we would just like to keep that tax rate forward. So we are not going out and asking for increases. There will be bond issues in our county in this school year that will be communities asking for increases. That's not what our board is doing. So we're seeking additional revenue to extend the tax rate, but we aren't seeking an additional ask of voters to come up with more money than they normally have. I think, I'm glad you asked the question, because I think it's important to kind of know the historical timeline. Pre-COVID, we had a enrollment at a certain level. As COVID hit, we had enrollment decline, a pretty steep enrollment decline. And since then, we've seen pretty gradual decline, but less than 1%. Our enrollment's not falling off a cliff. But through that, we had ESSER money, right? We had this influx of federal dollars that allowed us to not have to make any of the hard decisions, right? Things were really hard during COVID. Things were really hard for everybody. Kids were dysregulated. We were contact tracing. Teachers were absent a lot. So the board made an intentional decision. Let's keep things as they are and not disrupt the system too much. Last year, that all kind of came to a head, and we had to make some decisions. We had lost enrollment in students, and so we were over capacity on the buildings we had. So we had to make a hard decision that was even harder because of the circumstances. So closing schools is hard. The way we did it was even harder. We tried to be as least disruptive to the system as possible, but to take schools and really disperse students and staff, because schools have a connection. They build a team, they build a family, and so to do away with that is really, really hard. The difference in this, and what we're hoping the investment can change about that, is that we would have newer and fewer buildings. The kids could go to newer schools, even though their school may close. They would end up in a newer facility, not brand new necessarily, but one of our newer schools built in the last 25 years, as opposed to something that is 75 years old. So, with this investment, we believe we can strategically build new buildings in the areas of town that need it. Close some buildings to create operational efficiency, like we're going to continue to need to do. But at the same time, we can lift and shift some of those schools and classrooms. Not every kid will be able to stay with their teacher and with their class in the same group. But if you look at the map and see kind of the strategy of how we're combining them, it won't feel like it did last time around if we're able to pass the bond issue. So.
And I
So
would
go
just
ahead.
quickly
Go for it.
add on that point is that the Board of Education asked administration to come back with us, especially after going through the turmoil of having to close those schools. We needed to know where our students lived. And we asked for a fact-based plan that was based off of the new reality of what I was mentioning before, this transition from a baby boomer generation where you put a school on every single corner because that's where the kids were. But we went through a very good vetting process of knowing where our students live so that they can still be fairly close to their school and still keep that neighborhood feel.
So you're saying, obviously, there is no increase in the tax rate, but this is an extension of taxes, bond and interest taxes that would have fallen off and shown some tax savings for residents this year or next. I guess my question is, why not chip away with little bond issues like suburban districts do? Why do these, 3 and 50 years, as opposed to getting voters used to, paying that tax and not having it drop off?
That's a great question, and looking forward, that if you saw the graphic that Susan Willis posted last night, is that bond cycle, right? Of that you're continually in a looking at what needs to come next. It's interesting because I'm glad that President Reeser brought up other districts and that idea of, because this will be some good homework for y'all. To look at the cost per student of these bond issues, right? Hayesville has one that they've sent to the State Board of Ed. There's other districts that are going to be bringing them. Much different than us when you factor in the cost per student. Our size is really hard to wrap your head around sometimes, right? We're not only the biggest district in the state of Kansas, we're by far the biggest district in the state of Kansas. We're 8 and 9 times any of the districts around us. They need investments too, right? They're going to go to their voters and they will be asking for increases in some places. So to create a plan, a longer term plan, we call this step one. This is not the be all end all of bond issues. Part of the way school finance works in Kansas currently is that in order to maintain facilities, school districts pass bond issues, right? This is part of the mechanism. Capital outlay funds are not sufficient to do especially in a district our size. So to answer your question, I don't know that there is there's not a step 2 date, right? We have February to work out right now and focus on that. But to go smaller, incremental, more frequent bonds, that ultimately is a board decision, but there's good strategy behind that.
To sell a bond issue in Wichita, you always need the non-school people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the last one passed by barely, 52% in 2008.
Which
How
is
do you,
good in today's political
yeah,
environment.
okay, granted, yes.
I would take a 52%
How do
victory
you-
any day.
How do you convince people without children or even grandchildren in schools, but people who don't have, might not be, connected to the school district, that they need to vote for this?
Sure. I'll answer, and then if Stan wants to answer too. I'm a product myself of public education, and I was able to get the education I have because generations before me invested, right? It feels like a bill when we get our tax bill, right? It feels like a bill that we're paying. It's actually an investment, and it's an investment in the future, an investment in our kids. I equate it a lot to, putting your money away for retirement. When you write your check for your IRA or whatever it is, you don't think of that as a bill you're paying. You're thinking of it as an investment you're making. And our kids are an investment, right? They're an investment in our community. They're an investment in our future. Most of our kids in Wichita Public Schools, we graduate about 2,700 students every year. Most of those students stay in our community. It is beneficial for all of us, every single person living in the community, for those kids to be productive and to be great citizens that are engaged in the democratic process, and they're able to have employability skills and all of those things. So we need the community's help to make that happen and make that true. It takes all of us. And again, we're not asking for more. We're just asking for the same, and that continued investment for our kids. And that continued investment, because we're so big, we can do a lot with that money, right? We can do a lot with that money to really create innovative learning spaces for kids, to get kids future ready. One of the ideas that we hope, comes to fruition in February, is a Future Ready Center for construction trades. What have we been hearing, from our community? Bring back shop class. We need more kids with hands-on skills. Trades are a really good profession. And so we heard that feedback from the community, and we're responding to that feedback. We're gonna train kids, and if they want to go straight into the workforce, we're gonna prepare them for that so that they can give high-wage jobs right out of high school. So
I would just add to that the general response to that will be, these kids deserve this. They're part of the community. But more importantly, these are the kids that will someday be your doctor. They will someday be your auto mechanic. And you deserve and you need these kids to be fully functioning adults. And with today's environment of where we have classrooms set up for baby boomers, and I don't mean that derogatory term because I'm a baby boomer myself, but we were set up 25 desks in a row and we listened to a teacher all day long. That is not what needs to happen today. We need more innovative classroom spaces that meet the need of our, and we know that this works. We see it daily in our classrooms. So I think we'll be asking the non-children citizens of our community to join with us in this hope and for this desire to make Wichita a better place to live.
A question that I had, I know Suzanne was talking about convincing voters who don't have kids who are going to school, but I know that a lot of surrounding school districts that have asked for smaller bonds had to push them years and years and years before they finally got them through. Really, why do you think that this will be different and it'll pass, in just a couple months the first time it gets put up for vote? Because it sounds like you don't really have a plan yet for what to do if it doesn't pass.
Well, yeah, we have a plan. We have a facility master plan, step one, that's been approved. So that'll continue to be the plan unless the board takes action to do that. What the bond issue is how to fund that plan, right? So if we don't have the funding for that plan, then we'll have to go back to the plan and see what parts of this can we do in a short term, what decisions can we make, and then what do we look like going forward. I'd push back a little bit. True that some communities have had to go back to voters more than once. Not true that all communities have had to do that. There's been successful bond issues, and it all comes down to what is in the plan. In my opinion, that's just my opinion that I think this plan is really, really solid. 5 elementaries, 2 middle schools, early childhood, Future Ready Center. We're not going, we're not doing anything for extracurriculars really. Any of those kind of outside the classroom sort of things are super critical for kids. Fortunately, we're in a pretty good place as a district because of the last bond issue, built lots of tennis courts and swimming pools and gyms. So that's not really a need for us right now. So this isn't extravagant. We are not looking for, anything out of the ordinary, in my opinion. It's a very sensible bond or bond plan that can do a really great amount for our kids. So, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I misunderstood. I thought you meant there wasn't a plan A. There's always a plan B and a plan C. But this board is going to focus on plan A for the next 5 months. And 5 months, if you think about it, is a long time for community engagement. And we're committed to that. So even though it may appear like it's a short period of time, it's actually not. There will be ample opportunities for all our citizens to get involved in this. We live in a very fast pace where many things are done in a very short amount of time, and we're going to be spending 5 months on this. So we're very happy about Plan A, and we'll deal with Plans B and Plan C if that is what is necessary.
Are there
similarities between the '08 ask and where we're at today with this ask?
Go ahead.
You know, I think of course there are, right? Of course there are. We are looking at similar size elementary schools. All of the elementaries that we built with the '08 bond were 4-section. So if you have, 4 classes of first grade, et cetera. Beyond that, you think about your life in 2008, you probably weren't on Facebook, right? I mean, social media world was completely different. There was a lot, 2 high schools is a very different investment than what we're talking about today. Even the proportion of it, right? $370 million and dollars 16 years ago is different than $450 million. I mean, this is per inflation, this is a smaller bond issue. The mill rate was higher. The ask for the mill rate was higher then than it is now. It was on a November election. George W. Bush was president when the last bond was voted on, which gives you a little bit idea of, the timing of it. So, maybe a few similarities, but I feel like a lot is different and a lot has changed. So
Some of those differences with extracurriculars were more intended in '08 or?
yeah. And safe rooms, and that's that. I do think this is an important thing to mention. We have FEMA shelters in all of our current buildings, and over the course of the last 17 years, the board has been dedicated to putting secured entrances at the entrance of every school in the district. We did not do that with a bond issue, except with the new builds. We've done that with capital funds. So as we weigh priorities with capital funds and repairs and deferred maintenance and all the different things that we have to spend money on, one of the priorities has been those secured entrances, and we're I think within 10 schools of being completely done with that. I'm very, very close to having all of our schools with secured entrances. Most other communities, at least ones in Kansas around here that I know of, they needed a bond issue to do that. So they went and asked voters for more money in order to do that. Our board has been able to make that happen because the time between bonds is part of the reason why, but because of priorities, that they knew that was a priority they wanted to put into place. So
Emphasize that it's somewhat of a moderate act, especially considering like the needs of the district with deferred maintenance, but it's also exceeding the debt limit. More than 14% of the value of all property in the district is what you're asking voters for. Do you have concerns with, I guess, the economic state of the people who would be paying for this, and the property values in the district? Do you feel landlocked? I know a lot of the outside districts are newer builds, urban sprawl, things like that. Do you have any concerns regarding that, and how would you address those long term?
I can say a few things about that. I do think proportionally it is a moderate bond. One of the questions I've been asked is, you have $1.2 billion in deferred maintenance. Why don't you have a $1.2 billion bond issue, right? If those are your needs, why aren't you asking the voters to fulfill the need? And President Reese already mentioned our starting point has really been, keeping tax rates level for taxpayers, and it's actually down. If you didn't catch it last night, we're at a 14-year low on the mill rate from the school district for Wichita Public Schools. So we have heard from taxpayers, right? We need relief. Valuations are up. We know a lot of our taxes have gone up because the cost of our house, or the appraised value of our house, has gone up. So we have heard that and tried to offset that some. Exceeding the debt limit is not by much, honestly. And the '08 bonds will be paid off here in the next few years, which will bring us down, I believe. I'm talking for Susan right now, but I believe my understanding is once we get past that, it'll bring us down below the 14%. So I don't know if you want to say anything on that.
I want to just follow up real quick on your question. The investment, the thing that is the same is we are asking for an investment from the community for our students. The difference is the needs of 2024 are different than the needs of 2008. So that's where it's similar and that's where it's different. On your question about this is indeed a modest ask, and that was with the direction the Board of Education gave the administration from the very start. We are very sensitive to the fact that there are members of our community that are hurting with rising property values and the taxes that come with that. So that's one reason why we wanted to keep it modest. But I want you to think about if you had a home or a car that you had not put a major investment in the last 16 or 17 years, what would your deferred maintenance be? And then if you like, well, I'm going to have to stretch my budget a little bit in order to reach that and improve my home or improve my car so I can get to work, then you probably will do that. But here's the thing. There have been a lot of urban school districts that have been in the same situation that we have. And it's when they stop investing in their school district is when the real problems start. We are determined to make sure that every single student in our school district, regardless of their zip code, has the same opportunities as any kid in the surrounding school districts. So that was the overall importance that the board saw at this time.
One of the big differences, certainly in strategy, of this bond issue versus 2008 is in 2008 and 2000, everybody got a little something. You asked what school you were at, and you could say, here's what you're getting out of the bond issue. This is more of an overall restructuring, a look at the overall footprint. Do you worry that strategy may backfire?
I don't, and this is part of the story that we need to tell. Well, for one, I would say, we're getting out of some other buildings. We have two non-attendance centers that are on the list. We have a lot of alternative programs that we're going to consolidate. So part of our overhead costs we're trying to shrink, benefiting taxpayers, right? We're going to become more efficient, more lean as a school district. In doing that, the pie, Susan Willis uses the pie analogy a lot. So the pie that we have to slice up for all of the schools, because there's so many buildings, it ends up, everybody gets a crumb, everybody gets a very, very small slice. If we can take some of those offline, especially, the alternative schools that we consolidate into one spot, if we get some of the non-attendance centers out, if we are able to, put two into one, newer and fewer, and then we build new schools, and we have this portfolio of, I can't tell you off the top of my head, 15 to 20 schools that are within 25 years old. All of a sudden, the pie is bigger for the remaining schools, and work orders get completed quicker, and more of the projects can get done, and things like that. We will also look at step 2 and what that looks like for some of the buildings and how that investment looks. But I do think it does indirectly impact every school. Every school will have better, every student will have better opportunities, and we'll be able to be more responsive to fixing things because of the work that we're doing in these schools. It is a different strategy. I mean, I do think that's important to note, but we tried to base it on data. We tried to base it on flat mill rate. Could we throw in a playground for every school or something like that? Yes, we could, but that would probably look at a tax increase. We do have, as part of the plan, deferred maintenance in every high school. So there's not a high school piece of this, but there will be deferred maintenance costs, or deferred maintenance, roofs, parking lots, HVAC, those sorts of things in our high schools. So not every elementary will get touched. Not every middle school will get touched. But we hope, again, that everybody does have a better school experience because of it.
Does the confidence at the state level come from that cost per student, or are there other elements that make you confident in this bond? Or as far as how much it'll cost, as far as cost per student, you mentioned other bonds in other districts.
Oh, yeah. So what the math that Stan did, 450 million divided by the student population, right? And so if you take that, if you look at another district and you take their bond issue of 100 million, they only have 3,000 students. You do that math, all of a sudden the cost per student is a lot more in their district. So that that's the comparison that he was trying to make. So does that make sense?
Okay, so say this passes, the 7.5 mils approximately goes on the tax rolls, and is that on top of the 2008 bond until 2029 and then that drops off, or does the 2008 bond drop off immediately and it's a replacement cost?
So they what they call wrapping. They wrap the bonds so that the early on with the new set of bonds, those would be essentially mostly interest being paid as we pay down the 08s. But the cash that we're getting in from the taxpayer stays level in order to make those payments. So it's kind of front loaded, I guess you might say, but it's a very normal strategy that pretty much every school district does, where you wrap the bonds together, and as one goes out, the other comes in and increases. It keeps the mill rate level, but increases the amount of principal you're paying off the loan. So.
You mentioned in the past, you hope to kind of start construction here next summer. So just kind of when can students start to expect maybe some of these new buildings coming online, some of these changes, some of these improvements coming online?
Yeah, I mean, I think we would hope by the 27 school year we'd have kids in new buildings. There'll be some staging and some kind of cascading that'll need to happen with new buildings and shifting around. But I believe right now our priority would be the elementaries and the middles, and then work on the alternative schools and the early childhood future ready center toward the back end of the bond. We'd hope to have most of the construction completed within the 5 to 7 year window. So.
I guess what would you say to people who are concerned that you guys are just trying to A, either keep up with the Joneses, or B, stay competitive in hopes of that you don't end up hemorrhaging students with the new open enrollment policies that are going on?
Well, I don't want to speak for him. Maybe if you want to, keeping up with the Joneses is one way to look at it. Giving our kids what they deserve is another way of looking at it. So I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, if this was strictly about keeping up with the Joneses, I don't think this Board of Education would be interested. But I do want to push back on this concept that Wichita kids don't deserve the same type of innovative classrooms as a kid from a surrounding area. And that's what really drives my passion on this, is that these kids, I mean, I visit the schools all the time, and they have the same desires as kids from surrounding school districts. And then sometimes we put them in a really tough situation. There'll be a series of videos that we will hopefully roll out that shows like a kid from Truesdale that has to walk half a mile to have 20 minutes for lunch. And I just recently visited my grandchild's school down in Derby, and it was a newer facility, and those kids have a nice advantage in various ways. But I do hope you'll reach out to teachers and ask them the questions about what they are looking for in innovative classrooms and why that is important for their instruction. They're a better expert on that than I am, but this is really an effort to give our kids the same opportunities as any kid, regardless of a zip code.
I guess how concerned are you that if these improvements and additions aren't made, that you'll lose enrollment to some of these surrounding districts that are going to have, their own bond issues and be making their own improvements?
Well, I mean, I don't want to speak for the board, but I don't feel like that's really driving this. I think the plan is based on data, and we have needs for our facilities, and those costs are high. And so in order to be the district of choice, in order to become who we want to be in the future, we're not worried about the other districts as much. But who we want to be in the future requires us to be able to invest in the places we want to invest. You'll see, if you followed last night's budget, balanced budget, lowest mill rate in 14 years, and an investment in staff, a 5% wage package for this year for staff. So our board values our people, people over places. We know that that's what makes the difference. But we also know, what President Reeser just said, that, our kids deserve it. Our kids deserve quality learning environments. Our teachers deserve to teach in quality learning environments. And to be able to use project-based learning and application level skills with kids that you can't do in 700 square feet very easily. A 700 square foot classroom very easily. So.
In the past, there's been a Vote Yes campaign that's been led usually by a local leader that's obviously legally separate from the district. Is anyone starting that? Do you know if that has, do you have any idea if that's going to happen this time?
No one has started that yet. I would imagine that will happen this time.
I guess, how do you get people excited, and how do you get people to understand mill levies? I know there's a lot of people, once you start talking about that, their eyes just kind of glaze over and kind of go zone out.
Yes, it is complicated. There's no doubt about that. So I think, I think we're hopeful that people understand, just like you do sales tax, right? You know that you go and you pay 7% sales tax on something. The mill rate's very similar to that. We're not raising the rate, right? We're not raising the mill rate. So if people can understand that and latch onto that, hopefully they can remember that we can invest in our kids without increasing taxes as far as the rate goes. As far as getting people excited about it, I think the more we talk about the plan, the more excited I get. As we look at design in some of these learning spaces, they can be really innovative and really cool. I think it can be inspirational for our kids and our students. We talked last night, if you were there, about community schools. So working with the community, nonprofits, mentoring groups, support to be literally housed in our schools, and how can we work together for the betterment of our kids. That's exciting to me. I say all the time, our community loves our schools and our community loves our kids. People want to help our kids in our district. And so to have some better mechanisms and ways that people can plug in and do that, I think will be really exciting to a lot of people in the community. The one other thing I just, and this is more, again, I've given you 2 homework assignments, I guess, today, but another homework assignment that has come up as part of our discussions, not publicly much, is about the bond cap, that there is a state cap for bond issues, and that's playing into a lot of strategy across the state this year in a way that it hasn't before. So that's a bit of the answer to the timing question, and why we wanted this to go to the State Board of Ed next month in October, is because there are state limitations on that. And if big districts like us, several of us, all go after bond issues that can really have impact on if you can take it to the voters or not. So that is another wrinkle to the timing. It's more complicated than the mill levy is, so I'm not going to try to explain it to you all, but you'll probably be hearing more about that as other districts like us, kind of now that we're through COVID, we're really looking at facilities and timing, and we're not the only ones across the state who are asking voters to do this. So that's all I got. You have anything? Anything we forgot? All right. Thank you everybody for coming today. Great turnout.